I'm warning you. I'm trying to help. It's the last really important decision you will get to make. If you sign up for it, the people who are taking over do not require your consent, your collaboration, you to do anything after that.
Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today I'd like to talk about digital ID. It's been reported in the media that more and more MPs are pushing for digital ID in the UK. The reason for this, they say, is to combat, for example, illegal migration and other forms of trafficking. This is just one example. Is this simply fear-mongering, or is there something darker at play? We should be asking ourselves. And are we being nudged into accepting a scheme that will lead us into a world of total entrapment and constant surveillance, a place where we are no longer in control of any aspect of our lives? The Together Declaration have been compiling a digital bill of rights. As everybody is talking about digital ID, it really is at the moment the flavour of the month as topics go. They say we're launching a major push for a digital bill of rights to protect our freedoms, fight digital exclusion and push back against creeping control. I'd like to play a short clip.
Hi again, Alan Miller here. In the last video, I told you about the Digital Bill of Rights we've been working on at Together with members, a way of making technology help us, not so it controls us. This includes everything from digital ID to surveillance, to protecting cash and the right not to be forced into digital-only systems. The key idea: if we don't shape the future, someone else will. Now, we've got a draft version that we're really happy with, and we'd love your feedback before we launch it as a full campaign. In a few days, I'll share another video on how we'll fight for these principles and how you can get involved yourselves. But right now, I'll hand over to my colleague, Rob, who's going to walk you through the draft itself. Let us know what you think, and thanks again for being part of this. It's really, really important.
The Together Declaration recently put out an email on the 10th of July 2025. It was entitled "Exposed Freedom of Information Uncovers UK's Secret Digital ID Work." The UK government has quietly admitted it holds thousands of documents relating to its involvement in global digital governance and digital ID programs led by the UN and World Economic Forum. Working with Together, journalist Lewis Brackpole did a Freedom of Information request to the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, which confirmed it is participating in initiatives related to digital identity, trust frameworks and digital public infrastructure. However, the FCDO refused to release the material, citing cost of disclosure. This is all very underhand, I'm sure you'll agree. A single UN programme alone produced nearly 2,000 documents involving UK officials. As Lewis puts it, this confirms that the UK government is actively embedded in the development of global digital ID systems outside of public scrutiny and without parliamentary debate. And this is the whole point. These things are being decided behind our backs. There is no democracy in this story whatsoever. Now, there are 7 main articles of this UK Digital Bill of Rights that Together Declaration are proposing. And now follows a short slideshow. I think you'll agree, though, that whilst the Digital Bill of Rights that the Together Declaration are proposing is indeed intended to protect us all from tyranny and protect our rights as humans and as individuals, why, as British citizens, should we accept or be subjected to any digital ID in the first place? The Big Brother Watch emailed me recently regarding writing to the Home Affairs Select Committee as part of the evidence in their digital ID inquiry. Now, how many people knew about this? They said, "Dear Catherine, thank you for signing our petition telling Keir Starmer to reject a proposal for mandatory digital ID scheme called BritCard," which even Reform UK are talking about. "You're helping us fight for all of our privacy rights by calling on this proposal to be scrapped." When it boils down to it, can you trust any party? If Reform have also been talking about it, are they any better than the rest of them? It says, "An inquiry on this is now open, but it closes on the 21st of August 2025. This could be one of your last chances to speak out against digital ID before it's too late." Correction, this could be one of everybody's last chances to speak out against digital ID before it's too late. In fact, it could be the last chance saloon. But the question is, unless you're politically motivated and do your utmost to keep staying in the loop, how do you know about this? How many people know about this? It's almost as if it's happening behind our backs, because there's no coverage on this in the mainstream media, which is where a lot of people go to get their news. It's not even on a lot of social media or even independent media. So this is quite worrying. Anyway, I will put a link to the template and all the information you need in order to be able to write to the Home Affairs Select Committee in form of evidence, so you too can have your say about these Orwellian plans. And this does need to happen before the 21st of August, so time is of the essence. I will give you a few pointers though, without reading my entire evidence, because I don't particularly want to run the risk of having my evidence withdrawn for sharing it here before the inquiry draws to a close. Bearing in mind that these days people are discouraged from doing so because talking about these things can invalidate it, so they say. It basically starts though, "Dear Chair Dame Bradley and members of the Home Affairs Select Committee," that part is in the template, "I'm writing in response to your call for evidence for the inquiry harnessing the potential of new forms of digital ID. In particular, I would like to address question 4. What potential risks does the adoption of new forms of digital identification have for individuals, including risks to privacy and security of personal data?" Now you can follow the template. Do try to adapt it and put examples of your own experience in there rather than just copy and paste, because if you just copy and paste, the committee are less likely to take your views and evidence on board. So your reply can be as short and sweet or as long as you wish, as long as it is coherent and well written. You can talk about, for example, how digital systems are open to abuse and identity crime. Have you, for example, had your ID stolen and used by somebody in order to perhaps gain credit, for example? Or perhaps somebody has used your identity to buy things and therefore you have had your account charged, for example. There's also the recent occurrence whereby the identification of Afghans was leaked and exposing them to possible retribution by the Taliban. That's been in the news very recently. I'm recording this on Wednesday, the 16th of July, and this was reported yesterday. And there can be other examples such as general data breaches. One such thing happened to me several months ago where somebody tried to charge my account for something that I had not purchased. Fortunately, the bank, or it may have been the AI in the bank system, detected there was a suspicious transaction and they hadn't let it go through, but they texted me to ask me if indeed I had verified this transaction, which I hadn't done, and consequently my card was cancelled. I had to change my various passwords online and wait for a new card and a new PIN. Now, the bank were not able to tell me which of the sites where my details are stored had been exposed to this potential fraud. However, last year I kept getting spams through the Etsy system of people claiming to be customers, for example, and really they were just after my details, which fortunately I was wise enough to realise that their intentions were not good, and I didn't respond to any of the links or any of the messages. But this is quite worrying, especially due to the fact that I must have changed my password 3 or 4 times, and each time they were getting into the Etsy system. So one needs to be very careful what site you're using. I also use a VPN and an advanced firewall. Even so, I was still exposed to this potential fraud. This is another reason why I don't like to use anything that has anything to do with digital. I mean, imagine if, for example, your health data was stolen, or if you're giving your health data away, where's it going to? The NHS, for example, sold certain contracts to Palantir, which is a spyware and data gathering service. What is this service intending to do with people's personal data? It doesn't really take very long when we think about it to start joining the dots. I pointed out that a mandatory digital ID scheme would require the government to collect, store and analyse heaps and heaps and heaps of personal, including health data, in order for it to work, and that everybody would be expected to have a smartphone and upload information to that smartphone with their name and right to work status. Well, I'm sorry, but where I'm concerned, that's not going to happen. And there are many people in this country who don't have a smartphone or want a smartphone, and there's a maybe smaller percentage as well of people who are unable to use a smartphone. For example, perhaps they no longer have the mental capacity, or perhaps they have some illness that prevents them from doing anything, and they might even be blind, for example. And is anything like this actually going to prevent fraud? Is it not likely to encourage fraud? And is it actually going to stop illegal migration when these people arrive and have knowingly thrown their passports and other forms of ID into the sea on their way in? Us showing our papers isn't going to change, as far as I can see, anything at all, except make us subservient to the state and leave us potentially exposed to fraud and as well various forms of control. You could even say tyranny. If you're born in the UK and you have your passport and maybe a driver's license and a national insurance number, why should you have to show your papers? To me, I can't see any reason for it at all. And while other countries may have had an ID system for a long time, this is a whole new ball game in the UK and other Commonwealth countries, including Canada. That is not part of our culture. That is not the way we see the world. And what about the potential for changing our relationship with the state? How much do we want the state to know about us? Every chapter and verse I'm talking about, is nothing allowed to remain private, such as a health condition, for example, or some other personal information, such as maybe domestic abuse or disability. And some people feel very embarrassed as well about the fact that they have been subjected to abuse of some kind. They may be made to feel that they're weak because they allowed it to happen, although abuse is fear-based. Abuse grinds the person down, so they are left to feel worthless. Abuse is part of fear and control of somebody by another. The British people, I believe, are mistrustful these days of anything that the government want us to do, especially given the happenings over the last few years. People have little appetite for this kind of thing, and some may be fearful of such political schemes, and this goes back to being a form of abuse of somebody by the state, or fear of abuse. Everything is fear driven in the 3D world. Politicians have tried to claim that digital ID systems would solve various problems, such as fighting terrorism or protecting us from certain illnesses, but the public has repeatedly rejected such identity systems, and hopefully will keep on doing so. But the ways and means of persuasion, or rather nudging, become increasingly sly and underhand and sophisticated. I would like to say as well that I ended my particular evidence by saying that a lot of us would refuse to participate in any digital ID system, and that if such system was foisted upon us, that a lot of votes would be lost. Play them at their own game, why not? I would at this point like to thank Kath for forwarding me a video by Dr. Mike Yeadon. Now, anybody who doesn't know Dr. Mike Yeadon, he is a former Vice President of R&D at Pfizer in Sandwich, and he specialised in acute respiratory illnesses. I will provide the link to this interview, which can also be viewed on YouTube by Oracle Films, in the description to this video. The video is also available on his substack, Fraud Prevention Hotline, and I will provide the link to this in the description to this video also. So let's listen to a short clip of what Dr. Mike Yeadon has to say about digital ID.
There's really only one senior institution. It's a group of people who you can see as supranational groups, from the UN, WHO, the International Panel on Climate Change, the World Economic Forum, Bilderberg. You should see them as the same. They're different manifestations. Trilateral Commission. Keir Starmer is a member of the Trilateral Commission, the only elected British politician who's a member of this globalist group, at least that particular one. They're all founded by the same group of people. They've been running for decades to much longer than a century, and I believe they believe their destiny is to control all us little people, all us. They see us as useless eaters. Useless eaters. Where have you heard that phrase before? What happens to useless eaters, do you think? I think they believe it's their destiny, maybe their obligation, to take control of everyone, everywhere, forever, using digital means. So digital ID, digital money, geolocation, and an obligation to be injected, something like that. You don't need much more than that. The control mechanism is so frighteningly simple. I warn people, and I'm not going to sign up for digital ID. I'm probably going to regret that statement, but you don't need a new global single format editable digital biometric ID. But that's what digital ID means. Single global editable biometric digital ID.
So Dr. Mike Yeadon explains that the United Nations, World Economic Forum, Bilderberg and other globalist groups are all manifestations of the Trilateral Commission or supranatural group, and Sir Keir Starmer is the only elected member of the UK Parliament who is in this group, and that alone might raise one or two alarm bells when you consider the current debate. Also as well, we have an over 400 majority in the House of Commons of Labour MPs, which makes it very difficult for true democracy to take place, because there will be a majority that vote with the government unless it's exceptional circumstances, or else they will be brought into line to go along with the whip, which isn't really democratic at all either. If an MP, even if it's a Labour MP, feels obliged to vote with the government even if they don't want to. But this is where courage is necessary, and I think in this story we're reaching a point where MPs may have to either resign and continue as an independent, or maybe even cross the floor. Dr. Mike Yeadon issued this video as a final warning. We have to act now, otherwise we may not get another chance to get out of the situation that we are in.
I'm warning you. I'm trying to help. It's the last really important decision you will get to make. If you sign up for it, the people who are taking over do not require your consent, your collaboration, you to do anything after that. And this is why. I'm going to tell you why. Even I, as someone who's not involved in finance, I'm clever enough to see that the debts of all major countries has been deliberately piled on and escalated to the point where it's obvious to all of us that the debts can never be repaid. We're struggling even to service the interest on the loans. So at some point, I predict with great confidence that an event like 2008, the global financial crisis, only 1,000 times worse, will occur. And that will mean every country is bankrupt at the same time. All businesses would be bankrupt at the same time. David Rogers Webb. David Rogers Webb. He is my matching half in finance. He's a retired hedge fund manager who discovered that the laws pertaining to private property rights have been altered over the last 50 or 60 years surreptitiously in every country on the planet. So when you think you own something, I invite you to look in. If you've got an investment account, you will find now, you won't find any statements to do with ownership. You'll only find the phrase beneficial ownership. It makes no difference most of the time. You can buy it and sell it. Let's say it's shares, stocks, bonds. You can receive dividends and so on. But the small print says, in the event of a large enough default, all the financial intermediaries who owe money to the people they borrowed it from, and then they owe money to the people they borrowed it from, in the event of a large enough default, the senior secured creditors, the people at the top, may seize the assets ever pledged as collateral by the layers below them.
At this point, entrapment is a few steps away, maybe even less. It's not at all in our interest, however it's sold. It's entirely in their interests. And the plan is about control, surveillance. If we fail to have the latest injection, potentially we may not be allowed access to our money, our jobs, or be able to go about our business in any way. However, at this stage, we need to have the courage to stand and say no, even if we have to go hungry or have no money. In fact, you could even defer any decision to go for the digital ID. If the worst came to the worst and they expected you to sign up, you could say, well, I'm going to defer my decision. And then you might say, well, I'll defer it. I want to defer it another month or 2 months. But if you're brave enough, defer a little bit longer still. Have you wondered why the country is in such a mess? It's almost by design, as if the economy is being brought to its knees deliberately in order to bring about a solution in the form of a one world digital profile where you no longer exist as an individual but become a QR code at the behest of a minority. Shadowy figures, perhaps, who we have not elected to serve us, and perhaps we don't even know their true identities either. But certainly they haven't been democratically elected by we, the British people, or other populations in other countries either. So you would become a QR code. So if you don't update, for example, your vaccine status, or maybe health status or other status, whatever it might be, your QR code will be invalidated, so you won't be able to buy anything. If you've said hurty words, for example, on the internet, your digital ID may be invalidated. More and more there's this surveillance with the facial recognition cameras, which are being used in quite a few shops now, for example, and even airports. And online apps encourage you to share your fingerprint or your face. No, it's not going to happen. If you have a car and you fail or refuse to allow permission for the installation of cameras and other devices, tracking devices, for example, you might get your QR code invalidated. You wouldn't be able to go anywhere or do or buy anything without validation, and even your money would be taken from you. And your every move would also be tracked. is that the kind of world you want to live in? It isn't the kind of world I want to live in. And therefore, I'm sure if that was the situation, that some of us would form alternative communities and go about things in our own way. It's important as well, therefore, to do your prepping and make sure that you have enough foodstuffs for at least 2 to 4 weeks. Tins, dried beans, pulses, rice, to get you through a tight spot, especially if the systems do go down as well as part of this push to get us into what is seen as a one world order. I'm going to play another clip now. This is what Dr. Mike Yeadon says about climate control as part of this digital reasoning. So let's listen to this.
I've found at least 3 or 4 people who've spent longer in atmospheric science and climate than I've spent in pharma R&D, and there is no question that there is no significant change to the climate of the world since pre-industrial times. Some people think it's a degree warmer or so. We're not sure. We weren't measuring it very much. Honestly, where do you think they got the temperature data from when there were virtually no thermometers? And they weren't calibrated to each other, and no one checked what the records really said. So this idea that they know it's 1.5 degrees, it's a lie. The temperature of the world has changed much more than that, repeatedly in geological history, much more than that. But the key thing you should know is there is no connection between CO2 in the air and the temperature of the surface, by which I mean, because people say, oh, it's a greenhouse gas. It's like, yeah, we don't live in a greenhouse. A greenhouse is a closed system. If you modify CO2 in the atmosphere, a pretty much open system, all that happens is the bits that are warmed transfer their energy to other atoms, and then they radiate them back out into space. The reason we know this is that there are ice cores from deep polar ice that have been looked at by several independent groups. What they all show is, yes, temperature has modified over time. Atmospheric CO2 has modified over time. Here's the important information. Changes in temperature always preceded change in atmospheric CO2. Atmospheric CO2 moves in response to the change in temperature. Warm water doesn't hold as much CO2. The seas are big. There's a lot of volume of the sea, so there is a lag. But after temperature of the air has warmed up, after a large lag, the sea warms as well. It releases some of its CO2. Everybody knows a fizzy drink loses its bubbles, which is CO2 dissolved. It loses its fizz when it warms up. So you know what I've just told you is true. Warm water holds less CO2 than cold water. When the Earth warms due to changes in solar output, modification of our non-circular orbit, alteration of the angle of the Earth to the solar ecliptic, any of those things and maybe others, whatever it was that makes the Earth warm or cool, the CO2 movement takes place afterwards and in the same direction. So all of this fear-mongering about burning fossil fuels, adding CO2, and that will change the Earth's climate, it is a lie. And they're lying to you to frighten you and to get you to accept, for example, restriction on internal combustion cars. Given what I've just told you is true, why would you not have 100-year-old technology that's being refined and is the exhaust coming out of very good cars today is cleaner than the air coming in through the intake in any city that's a bit grubby.
We can see here that even climate control is wrapped up in this whole digital ID system and ways of tracking our movement. For example, we need to stay in. We mustn't go out. Think about the emergency alert that's coming up. I think it's around the 7th of September, where some people, those who haven't turned off their emergency alerts, will receive an emergency alert. I believe it's to do with climate, just to test. The main thing is, please, please, please send your evidence in to the Home Affairs Select Committee before the 21st of August through the Big Brother Watch link to voice your concerns in your own words, if possible, as to why digital ID is a really bad idea. Give as many examples as you can remember and include personal examples as well. Don't copy the template word for word, but do adapt it as you see fit. Or even if you don't want to use the template, apart from maybe a few lines, then just write something short and sweet as to reasons why you think it's a bad idea. If they try to bring in a digital ID system, after all that, we know we can't trust them, do not comply immediately. Defer signing up a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever is necessary. Keep saying, oh, I'm still not sure, I need more time. Whatever is necessary. And show courage. Be prepared to go without. Make plans now for the possibility. And it's a good form of prepping anyway, in case of any emergency. Make sure you've got candles. Make sure that you've got some cash in the house and food in the cupboards and water. Practice self-sufficiency as much as possible. And don't forget to include provisions for your animals as well, including medicines, worming tablets, whatever else you need. We have a generator as well, in case the grid goes down. Remember, that's the whole point behind smart meters as well, isn't to save us money, so they can be switched off at the flick of the switch, and we don't need to do it. It's done remotely. And moreover, think about whether you want to live in a world where you can't even drive without technology keeping tabs on you, or you can't buy a pound of sausages because you bought some last week, or they think you're eating too much of something, or you can't have any beer because you had some on Tuesday evening. And that should be your first question when deciding what to do. If it is any good, why would they punish me? And this includes in terms of, say, health lockdowns. For example, bird flu. So if, for example, we're told to stay indoors through, say, an emergency alert or in the news, I personally don't listen to the news, because of a scary incident, just go about your day as usual without masks, social distancing or fear. Go for a long walk with friends, hug them, live your life, get out there. The expression, someone told you and you chose to believe them, is not knowledge or evidence. Knowledge is gained from things like personal experience, things that you've gone through or have seen personally, a questioning mind, an observation. So that includes what you have seen in general out and about, or what you have witnessed from other people's experiences as well. The more of us who do not comply and refuse to sign up immediately to any digital ID scheme, come what may, the more their attempts to control us will fail. Now, of course, this happened during the global incident with the NHS 100K, where 100,000 nurses who had refused to comply with the narrative went on a demonstration. I was actually there, and a lot of them threw their uniforms into the fountain at Trafalgar Square and even at the doors of 10 Downing Street. And consequently, within a couple of days, the whole plan to get rid of those 100,000 fell to its knees. And that was that. Salih Javid realised that finally he couldn't get away with the dastardly plan. So, as I've said before, defer, refuse to go along with any of the drama, question everything, live your life, eat well, get out and about, out in the sunshine, which is a brilliant source of vitamin D. And even if the sun isn't shining, you'll still get some vitamin D, D3 in particular, because the sun is up there somewhere. Join the dots. I don't need to explain it to you. You've seen enough in the news to know and make your own decisions about what's going on. Looking at things logically, if the government is intent on going ahead with any plan for digital ID with good strong principles, including the articles of the draft together Declaration Bill of Rights, coupled with the strength and courage of we the people, the government will have so many hoops to jump through in order to satisfy us that they'll just drop the whole idea. And on that note, I would like to say thanks for watching. What is your experience though? What are your observations? Are you planning on putting in your evidence? As I've mentioned, please do let me know down in the comments. Have you got anything to add? Have I missed anything? There's many ways of seeing the world. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a like, share, subscribe, ding the notification bell, and I will see you again soon, very soon, for something a little bit more light-hearted. But until then, bye for now.